All right, what up, team? So the Battlefield 6 open beta has been out for a day now. If you had early access, I've been playing quite a bit, trying to gather my thoughts on it and kind of how I feel about it. Overall, I think there's a lot of videos and a lot of sentiment glazing the fuck out of this game. And yeah, I disagree. Don't get me wrong, there's some good parts about this game, but is it like the great return of the Battlefield experience? Fuck no. It's mostly a Battlefield in name rather than in gameplay. It's far different from your traditional Battlefield experience. I'll tell you it's better than 2042. But I don't know who the fuck was like, oh, I hope it's better than 2042. The lowest fucking bar possible. To give you a bit more background on my perspective, I've played pretty much every Battlefield title with the exception of 1942, which was the first one, and then Hardline. Other than that, I've ripped a ton of Battlefield. Most of my hours are on Battlefield 4. That is absolutely the peak experience. Though I have a ton of time in Battlefield, and on top of that, I pretty much shit on every lobby. It's not like I'm just like some dog shitter complaining. Like, I'm usually top frag or second or third at the absolute worst. I'm very solid in my lobbies. Not that it's like anything to be proud of or something, but the point is I'm running around fucking murdering everyone, and this is still the perspective that I have. To jump right into the core of the issue, the fundamental problem with this game right now are the maps. It's why I say it's a 6 out of 10 so far in the thumbnail. I do think that this absolutely has potential to become a great experience for sure. Far more potential than 2042 ever fucking had, period. Again, low bar, but I think right now the big issue is the maps, their design, and also their size for the player count. Starting it off with design, all of the maps are just like lanes and meat grinders. It's pretty much all it is. I've played Siege of Cairo, Liberation, Dogshit, and then the one map with C, the shotgun hotel in the middle. I can't remember the name of it, but those are the maps I've played. I've tried to find the fourth map. I've literally played for like fucking 15 hours now, and I have not got the fourth map at all. I don't know, whatever. Well, of the three that I have played, they usually are like a set few amount of lanes that are surrounded by no man's land because there's just snipers and zero cover fucking everywhere, so you can't deviate from the path. And then at the end or at intersections of said paths, and they don't really flank either. There's not like a whole lot of alternative routes. You kind of just move to one lane or the other and then go die at the meat grinder at the end of that lane or at the ultra meat grinder at the intersection of said lanes. Once you combine this with a 64 player count, you get the vast majority of the woes, in my opinion, that are coming from Battlefield 6. And by the way, this happened in all the other Battlefield titles as well. A lot of the times you would have to, in the server browser that we don't have, you would have to be careful at the amount of players that the server allowed, because some maps play very well with 32 or 48 and are horrendous with 64, i.e. Operation Metro. Operation Metro with 64 players is the ultimate hellscape, turn into human mincemeat pile of shit simulator I have ever played. And that is precisely the experience that you're getting in the game currently because of all the aforementioned problems, which could be solved with the fucking server browser. Okay, I'll stop beating the dead horse. But on top of this, it's not just this kind of design in terms of the macro elements, it's also the design of the micro elements. There is no greater and ill omen for fucking map design when you are watching it and the guy's like, oh, it's just so immersive. You really feel like you're in an urban combat environment. You know what sucks about an urban combat environment? I'll give you a hint. It starts with F and ends with hiding in a fucking city where there's 9 fucking levels, windows as far as the eye can see. At every step you take, there's 400 angles looking at you at any given time. And guess what? In Battlefield, throwing 64 players, there's some cunt in a window as sure as the sun will fucking rise. And thusly, you are left with the decision, do I try to traverse the city and take some ground and get shot by some douchebag hiding behind a garbage can, or do I just clackety-clack roll the fucking dice and throw down and see at the shotgun hotel? Oddly enough, the urban environment map is actually my favorite of the ones I've played thus far, and that's mainly because the bar is so low for the other two. Siege of Cairo is literally just a Call of Duty map. It's the ultimate just run around, get a couple kills. Again, it makes me feel like a crackhead. I feel like when I play this game, I have to like hit a fucking line of coke and then just get in there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, just give me like 4 kills before I die, 3 kills before I die, and you're just like pulling this fucking lever over and over. it makes me feel like a bad person. I'm not a fan of it, okay? You just run in and fucking get some kills and die. It's exactly how I describe Call of Duty, right? And I think the Call of Duty critique that everyone's giving is fair, especially for the Siege of Cairo. It kind of reminds me of League of Legends if there were no champions and we're all just minions and we just spawn and run down our lane and die and do it over again, and then we all huddle around our cannon minion, which is a tank. But none of the maps compare to by far the worst experience of all time, which is Liberation Peak, otherwise known by its biblical name, the Ninth Circle of Hell. That is truly an apocalyptic hellscape of a map to play. I cannot believe, I don't know who the fuck came up with it, but Liberation Peak has to be the worst Battlefield map I think I have ever played, ever. Liberation Peak, in my opinion, epitomizes all the problems that I have mentioned with the maps into a single map. For example, on this side of the map right here, this is the no man's land. You do not go here unless you're sniping. You either counter snipe or hope they miss. That's your options to deal with snipers unless you're in like a fucking tank or something. But if you are a rush or melee with a rifle or an SMG, you just pretend the snipers aren't there. You just kind of ignore them, okay? And you just don't go over here. There's no cover. It's only scope glints and death. Then we have Tank Way. This is where the tanks are going. You see this guy? Let me give you his exact path right now. This is exactly what he's doing. He's going right on through. He's just gonna drive. He's playing Grand fucking Turismo on the tank. He's on the road. You don't go anywhere near this dumbass road. And then you have this section of the map to play with, which isn't too bad. But again, this is where all of the rushers go because everyone knows that all of this is true. So it's just the infinite death grinder right here, baby. You're just fighting 800 people at once. You run 2 primaries because you don't have time to fucking reload. And we're right back to playing the League of Legends No Champions Minion Simulator. Fortunately, when the majority of your woes come from the maps, they can therefore be solved by fixing the maps. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I'll leave the maps alone for now because I think it's quite obvious that they're the majority problem. Moving on, I think another thing that was really irritating about a lot of the coverage of this was that it was just a bunch of like glazing bullshit and a lot of like, oh, it's such a throwback to the original Battlefields. It kind of is. There are absolutely points to it. It is kind of like that. I will give him credit there. But the idea that this is somehow way more reminiscent of Battlefield 3 or 4 and not 2042 is nonsense. This game is far more Battlefield 2042 than it is any other Battlefield in nature. And I say that because there's a lot of modern iteration on this Battlefield that kind of is just fucking shit. For example, the dot that appears over the heads of your enemies when you look at them is the most AAA 2025 hold your hand like you are a fucking ape feature I have ever seen. I think it is so beyond antithetical to the spirit of the game and the whole like purpose of what we're doing. Why am I wearing camo? What's the point of using cover that isn't completely concealing? Why am I fucking even trying to hide or play carefully when they're just going to auto spot me? Like to sit here and say that, oh, it's so immersive. Yeah, no, there's nothing more immersive than just beep beep, shoot here. To be honest, I don't really hate this feature for the negative impact it has on gameplay, in my opinion, which it absolutely does. I hate it because of what it is. It's so quintessentially 2025 AAA, it drives me insane. Okay, and I'll be honest with you, it's really not that big of a deal, but I just can't handle the level of AAA that this solution is, right? Rather than solving the textures or the models of the players to make them more visible against the background of the map, we just decided to go with the solution that flies in the face of the cohesion and the experience that we're trying to create for the sake of convenience. Why change any of that? We can just put a fucking dot over their head that says shoot here. It's so fucking lazy. It drives me nuts. But alright, I digress. The next thing I want to talk about in terms of the modernization was the way that the ballistics work and the way that the guns function. It's a lot more 2042 than I had originally thought because initially you think it's just kind of the gun recoil and then you realize that it also blooms the fuck out as well. One of my least favorite parts, in fact, my least favorite part about 2042, which made it the most unplayable in my opinion, was the fact that the ballistics of the guns were fucking terrible. There was so much bloom for whatever fucking reason, and we kind of have that a little bit here. It's a lot better in this game. To give them credit, where credit is due. And I also really don't hate the ballistics that much. I think one of the worst parts about the nature of the guns as they are right now is that they are fucking horrendous until you unlock attachments. And I don't know if we have like kind of a fast track system because you get level 20 very, very fast on guns in order to make the beta more playable. But if it is the case that that takes a very long time, similar to what it was in Battlefield 4, it means that unlocking new guns is really not going to be a great experience. I already had trouble enough swapping over to the AK from my original weapon because just going from a gun with full attachments to a gun with none is awful. And like the M3333, whatever the fuck it is, the main rifle that you start with on assault, that thing is a pile of dog shit until you actually get some attachments on it. And then it's fine. And then it works great. And I think this is a pretty simple fix because it's just a little too much waiting on the attachments, in my opinion, that need to go to the base gun itself. And again, I think this is a stark difference between the modernization of Battlefield versus its more older titles, because in Battlefield 4, when you picked up the 416, it was immediately fucking cracked. And obviously, once you got the heavy barrel, it felt even better. But if you compare that to 2042 or even Battlefield 5, like the Tommy gun, absolutely fucking useless without the drum mag. The Scar HLMFG, whatever the fuck, in Battlefield 2042, absolute dog shit until you get the heavy mag. And again, the guns in Battlefield 6 follow a lot of this model. In regards to the TTK for the guns themselves, I really don't have a whole lot to offer here because I honestly don't really understand how I feel about it, or I can't really articulate the issue. It feels like it's way faster than every other Battlefield title. That is true. But when you think about it, it's 5 bullets to kill someone. I mean, that seems pretty like commensurate with all the other Battlefields. I remember fucking deleting people in Battlefield 4 and all the other ones. But again, it doesn't feel that way. So I won't make any comments about the TTK because I really just don't quite understand what the problem is. It seems that it's more than likely very slightly too fast. Aside from the attachments and whatever else is going on with the TTK, the other gripe I have with the guns is kind of how they perform at range, at least from the perspective of the rifles. Shooting someone at range feels really not great, and I don't know if that's intentional or if it should be that way. There are arguments to say that, you know, the rifles shouldn't be able to do whatever, and it's not real life. I don't give a fuck about real life. It's about balancing in the game, and I think there is a world where I can understand it, but I do think it feels like ass, and there's a lot of times where if someone's a little bit farther out of the range that I think is effective, which is not very far, I just let them go. Like, it's not worth wasting the bullets that you already don't fucking have enough of. Why the fuck do I only have 2 extra magazines for my primary weapon? Oh, you have a second primary though, which also has 2 spare magazines for a grand total of 5. So I have to be very careful with my ammo expenditure. Suppressing fire? Hardly know her. Oh, is it a sniper? Light of God scope glint in the distance? Well, unfortunately for me, I'm not wearing my clip-on tail holding the pocket of a support player, so I can't afford the bullets to shoot at him. I guess I'll just close my eyes and hope that he fucking misses. And this brings me to my next and final critique of the game, which I think is a more macro critique of gaming just in general, the more I notice it, and I think that's probably why I'm fixating on it. But I don't know if this push to force team play and force team interaction is a good thing for any game just in general. I'm going to extrapolate a little bit more broadly, but all this applies to Battlefield 6. I don't think it's necessary to limit the capabilities of a solo player and provide more advantages to group players, because the groups already have insane advantage just at a baseline level. They have people they're communicating with, they can bring more kits, more guns, more utility, more options. They have way more available to them by virtue of just being in a fucking group than the solo player will ever have. And maybe it's just because I'm biased, but a lot of these little nerfs to solo play just feel like shit. The fact that your stim is absolutely useless on assault, it doesn't really do anything. The fact that you have very little ammo to work with, you have very little healing to work with until you actually get your healing perk. I'm just not a fan of a lot of these changes, and again, I think this is a push for more of that modernization of the game, because in the older titles, you were kind of a one-man army, and maybe it was too much in things like Battlefield 4 or whatever, but it still felt infinitely better. And even in Battlefield 4, if there was squad play, the squad always beat the solo, no matter what. No matter what level of agency the solo player has, group play and squad play always wins. I don't really see the need to incentivize it or force it by creating further restrictions on a solo player. There are a few more problems like touch on, but I really don't think it's necessary because, again, a lot of it just boils down to the map design and how the maps are right now. I think all of that will be washed out once and if they actually fix the maps. But with all that being said, let's talk about some of the good things of the game because there are aspects of the game that I do enjoy. Well, I did mention earlier that the ballistics are kind of wonky and a lot of it is fixed with attachments. I do like that they went a more recoil based system than they did a more bloom based system. There is still bloom in it and it's kind of annoying, but that's kind of how Battlefield has always been. It's always had a lot of bloom, so I'm okay with it to a degree. But I like the idea of this mix where there's less bloom, but there's more recoil. Again, kind of because the attachments do fix a lot of that. One of the things I love about the system currently that I hope they do not change at all is how effective hipfire is. I love hipfire in this game. You'll see me do it all the time, and I think that is something that is a lot different from any of the other Battlefield titles that I can remember with the assault rifles anyway. Additionally, I also really like the movement system. I think it is very COD-esque and maybe it's a little much, but it is kind of nice to have all the different options when you're actually playing. I love the slide kill, the slide shooting mechanic. I think that has always been one of my favorites and I'm a sucker for that shit. I would say it's very not Battlefield, but I mean, we're a long way from Kansas anyway at this point, so I think maybe a little bit of deviation is probably fine. And the rest of the good stuff I have to say about it is just shit you've already heard. Again, aesthetically, it is, of course, it's a throwback to the original Battlefields, which I do like. I do like the soldier aesthetic, the way that the maps look. It's very pretty, and I actually think it runs pretty well, surprisingly, given all of the shit that's going on. But again, a lot of that is just more of like an aesthetic and an immersion feature. It really is, there's not a whole lot in terms of the gameplay that I really am like, fuck yeah, this is fucking amazing. But overall, the more I think about it, especially from the perspective of a longtime Battlefield player, I think this game is absolutely mid as fuck. It leaves so much to be desired. There are so many other things that I didn't mention that I just don't think are worthwhile to get into because a lot of it's very nitty gritty and that sort of thing, and it's not really kind of the primary concern. And once more, a lot of it will be fixed by fixing the maps. But even with the maps fixed and all of that, I really just don't see a whole lot here that I'm super jazzed about. It's going to be at best a very, very playable and extremely modernized version of Battlefield. It's essentially going to be what 2042 should have been, is kind of how I think about it. We're in the new era of Battlefield. I think at some point in time, you kind of have to wake up and smell the roses and accept that. And I think that this game is going to be the bridge between old Battlefield being dead and entering in the new era of it, where it's just kind of like a different version of COD. So I'm not really too hopeful for it. I don't think it's that bad. It's definitely playable. But if I'm being real with you, and if we want to have like a litmus test for this, if you could play this in its fixed state, we'll say good maps, whatever, blah, 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 or I could play a populated version of Battlefield 3, 4, 5, 1, 21, 42, 2, Bad Company 2, Bad Company. Any one of those, I would play the latter. Any title from the latter, I would choose over this. In fact, the only other Battlefield title I wouldn't choose to play over this is 2042. And so at the very least, I would say it's a step in the right direction. It's just unfortunately a step over a very, very low bar once again. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I just wanted to make this because I've seen so much fucking glazing about this, and I'm really thoroughly opposed to the whole, like, we should stop complaining about games because gaming is dying thing that people are doing now, and you should just be okay with having shit shoveled into your mouth, running defense for some multi-million-dollar corporation or whatever. I don't understand any of that. I do think it's okay to critique games. I think it's okay to say, hey, that sucks dick. And I think it's sure as fuck okay when you're paying, $80 for a game or whatever the fuck the price tag is. Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Deuces.